Hi everyone and welcome to SWPL My Story, and today I'm delighted to welcome Emma Black. How are you, Emma?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
No, not at all. Thanks for joining us. So we're coming into the international break now, so it's probably a good time to review the season so far. There's been 14 rounds of fixtures in SWPL one, and it's really shaping up to be some season. Some real star performances. Some teams that are absolutely flying, and the league's starting to get itself into a kind of format that we might have expected, but it is really close in all these different little sections.
Yeah, it is. I think that's the key word there, what you said, Martin. It's like little sections, isn't it? It's like little leagues within the league starting to form. And I think when I look back, I think, could we have another season like last season? Can it be exciting? Can it be as close? And this is the way it's certainly shaping up to be. I think, obviously, you just have to look at the top three, but then is that then going to be a top two, become a top two? Because Glasgow City are obviously, they've dropped off the pace a little bit. You know, they've had what, two draws and two losses this season already in the 14 matches. So could you write them off? I think it's going to be much more difficult for them in seasons going by. It certainly is.
Yeah, just looking at it there, they're 7 points adrift of Celtic at the moment. There's only a point between the top two, but you'd be daft, I think, to ever write City off. I know their performances haven't quite been what they would expect, particularly against teams that they feel they should be beating comfortably. At the weekend, for example, it was 3-1 against Dundee United with a late goal. So it was still probably a bit tetchy towards the end of that game, but they always get over the line, and having these breaks and then the winter break coming as well, that might just galvanise things, and maybe when the transfer window opens as well, bringing in some new players to help push them up and try and catch the top two.
Yeah, I think so. I think the winter break will be a welcoming break for Leanne Ross on their side, especially obviously with the announcement with Lavera going under the knife for an operation, and Colville obviously going under the knife as well. And she's obviously been hampered with injuries, so that's been a big loss for City, losing her because she's a top quality player. So I think this Leanne Ross will want this break to come, just so as you can say, she's got that winter break. Can she then obviously recruit and try to bring in new players? And I think that's what Glasgow City need. I think if you look across obviously the city, you see the likes of Rangers and Celtic, they've got depth in their squad, but not just depth. I think they've got quality in their squad as well. You know, they can, either manager can turn to their bench and say, right, who's going to be the game changer, who's going to be the one that makes a difference when you bring them off the bench. And I think Rangers and Celtic have definitely got that. And I think that's what Glasgow City are lacking at this moment in time, is just having that quality on the bench. But as you say, Martin, you definitely write them off at your own peril. You can't write Glasgow City off, or even Leanne Ross as an individual, as a person, because I know her quite well, and I played with her for a number of seasons. So there's no way she'll sit back and accept her team's performances. But as you say, that was a narrow victory over Dundee United at the weekend. But even before that, in midweek, when they were playing Montrose at home, it was only obviously 1-0. And I think Montrose got a goal chopped off as well. And I've heard a few people saying if VAR was in contention in the women's game, the goal may have stood. But yeah, they're getting over the line. They're getting the 3 points, which obviously is the most important part. But Leanne Ross won't be happy just having the 3 points. She'll obviously want to put in her team to put in a good performance. And not only that, I think the goal difference as well, Martin. I think if you even look
Yeah.
at last season, the goal difference is like an extra point, isn't
Yeah.
it? And you look at obviously the goal difference with Celtic and Rangers. I mean, they're absolutely flying. They're battering teams. You know, they're not just happy scoring the fourth or fifth goal. They just keep going to the final whistle.
Yeah, that's what I was going to touch on next. Looking at City and their performances, and you're looking at Rangers and Celtic, and obviously going down to the final day last season, and goal difference could be the difference. There's only a point between Rangers and Celtic at the moment, and you have the feeling that that's the chat that's in the dressing room at the moment in both camps. You're looking at Celtic's big win against Aberdeen at the weekend, and Rangers getting another big win as well, and you can just tell them not taking the foot off the gas. They're not going 3 and 4 up and then keeping the ball and just going through the motions. It's relentless at the moment, and it's great for us watching it, and we're all here to see the goals. But just for them to keep pushing on and knowing that it could come down to something as finite as a goal difference at the end of the season.
No, absolutely, and it could. But the only thing for me that was worrying, which I was speaking about this week actually, was about the obviously the goals that they're scoring. I mean, for the women's game, we don't want to see obviously 13 goals and 7 and 8 goals at the weekend, because it does nothing for our league. You know, a lower league is much more competitive than what it was maybe 3 or 4 seasons ago. It still doesn't have a good impact on the game for me, in my opinion, like having those big score lines. But see, when you're in that changing room with the likes of Celtic and Rangers, you don't even think about that, because I've been in that stage with Glasgow City at times where we're thinking, right, goals, 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 we need goals, don't concede. I know exactly that's what we said in the Rangers and Celtic changing room is, doesn't matter what the outside noise is, or it's not good for a women's game, scoring 13 goals, 7 goals, 8 goals in a game. It's just, we look after ourselves, because it's going to make us a difference to potentially win, obviously, the league title and get a Champions League spot. So it is hard. It's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, it's great to see all these goals, but then is it then going to have a bigger impact, a negative impact? Because when people who might not follow women's football as closely as us, they sometimes look at the score lines on obviously all the outlets that are used, be like, what's the women's game? Celtic 13, Aberdeen 0. That's a washing. Who wants to go and watch that? And it's easy for us to say that, but and then you spin that round, obviously Celtic and Rangers are not giving a damn what these people are saying or what we're saying about it. You know, they're just obviously, as you say, just being relentless and just taking care of the game that's in front of them. And you can only beat what's in front of you, isn't there? That's such an old cliche as well. But you can only beat what's in front of you. So no credit to them, but I think it will be the fine margins once again come the end of the season. Well, hopefully, because it'll be much more exciting for us.
Yeah, definitely. So as we said, it's almost like mini leagues within the league, and for me personally, the battle that I'm enjoying the most in the league at the moment is the fight for fourth, as it would seem, between Partick, Hibs, and Hearts. And we spoke before we came on. For me, my team of the season's up to this point, Partick. I love watching them. I don't even think it's fair to say they're punching above their weight. That's been said a lot. I don't even think it is, because they've been proving themselves last season. They're doing it again this season. This is where they belong. They're sitting fourth. They're ahead of 2 full-time teams. They've got a real team spirit. I've interviewed quite a few of the Partick girls, and that's the story that keeps coming back, is that togetherness that they have. They don't have as big a squad as the teams that they're competing with, but they've got a lot of quality in there and a lot of experience as well. I think that's showing now.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been bragging about Partick Thistle as well, also for like, this is the 3rd season in a row, because they've just quietly gone about their own business, haven't they? They've just like progressed steadily. They've done a lot of work off the pitch as well, and increased training sessions and tried to encourage girls to be at training more. And they found it extremely difficult, because they've got girls who are teachers, firefighters, you know, nurses, like all sorts, girls at university, and then juggling working shifts and then trying to be at training. So no, I don't think they're punching above their weight, because as you say, Martin, they've got quality players in there, and I think Brian Graham is doing a tremendous job there. I think he's totally bought into the women's game now, isn't he?
Yeah,
he may have maybe seen it as like a stepping stone just to come into the women's game. Let's be a manager, let's get the feel for coaching. But he's totally engrossed in it now, and you can see that from him. He's very passionate, and so's all the girls. So that filters through. Like, see, when you're playing as a player and you see your manager showing that passion and that enthusiasm, it totally rubs off in the changing room. And the Partick Thistle players are certainly responding to him. But as you've said, they've added quality within their squad as well. Like the likes of bringing in Cody Hay, who wasn't always starting for Motherwell last season. They brought Cody in, and she's been doing extremely well. Lucy Sinclair, that number 10 role, she's been tremendous as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting battle. And I covered the game at the weekend, the Spartans Hibs game, and when Spartans went 1-0 up, I thought, oh, could this be a wee upset? Could this obviously then create that bigger gap between Partick Thistle and Hibs? But as well, I think Hibs are on a good run for them as well. They've certainly certainly turned their fortunes around since that heavy defeat at Ibrox. It just seems like a different team. So when you look back in October, when they had that heavy defeat at Ibrox, and then you look at the team that was playing on Sunday against Spartans, it just looks like a totally different team.
Yeah, I think it was always going to be a bit of a rebuild job at Hibs when Grant came back in, and there was players moving on, new players coming in. But yeah, as you said, when you hit that period, September, October of that bedding in period, and then kicking on from there after the defeat to Rangers. So I think, if you remember, they went on and they got a big win over Aki's the following week just to
Yeah.
get that confidence back. And they don't seem to have looked back, and they've had 2 derby wins already this season as well. So that'll have them buoyant and just looking ahead and wanting more games. And this is where this season in particular, so many international breaks. It's been like small chunks of the season, so they can maybe the coaching staff can plan for like 3-4 games at a time rather than having to look too far ahead. So perhaps that has helped, but then also when you're in a good run of form and you're having to stop every 4 weeks for an international break, so it's probably suits some teams more than others. But Hibs and Hearts as well, they got their late win against Spartans, coming from, I think they were 3-1 down with 10 minutes to go. Then they got a big win against Motherwell the following week there. Then they got a win just at the weekend. They seem to be firing on all cylinders. So it's a really exciting part of the league, fighting out that fourth spot.
Oh, it is really exciting, because even Hearts had drawn against Glasgow City earlier on in the season. I thought to myself, oh, could Hearts be challenging for the top 3? Could this be the season that Hearts do it? Because they've done extremely well also, especially not so long ago. They were just promoted to SWPL 1, and then now obviously they've did that big investment. They've got their players in full time. They've brought in big players also, like Kathleen McGovern, for example. So they've brought in big players, and you're thinking, oh, this could be the season that Hearts could be challenging up there into third and second spot and challenging the top 3. But then they had that little dip in for them. Mm-hmm. They dropped a few points. You're thinking, oh, maybe they're not, maybe not actually, because when you're up fighting for league titles and up the top of the league, you've got to be consistent. You've got to be consistent in your results. Maybe not just performances, because you can grind out a performance at times, but you've got to have that consistency in picking up the 3 points, and they kind of had that little dip. Then, of course, just a few weeks ago, obviously the Hearts Hibs game, the Hibs Hearts game at Easter Road, where obviously the Hibs had won 2-1, and you're thinking, oh, is Hearts then maybe, is that they maybe hit a brick wall, or can they bounce back from this? So that's an interesting battle for me. But I think for me, probably you're talking about the break and having those maybe 4 or 5 fixtures and an international break. I think the 2 teams in that 3 out of the 3 that don't want the break would have been Hibs and Partick Thistle, because they're on a good run of form and unbeaten. Like, for example, Hibs are now unbeaten in 5 games, and they've got their next game is Glasgow City on the 10th of December. They wouldn't have wanted this break to come, because then you don't know what could happen within that break. Players' mindsets, could players pick up injuries at training, of course. So I reckon for me, Partick Thistle and Hibs wouldn't have wanted this break to come, because when it's like when you're playing and you're on such a good run of form, and you can't wait to go to training to see your teammates, you can't wait for the preparation for match days because everybody's buzzing, you're full of confidence, you just want the next game to come. So it'll be interesting to see how Hibs and Partick Thistle do come the 10th of December, and obviously the next round of fixtures.
No, that's great. So then, I think probably the fairest way to put it, this next little mini league, it's probably the inconsistency that's really frustrating the managers. We've got Aberdeen, Motherwell, Dundee United, Spartans just coming in there as well. And 1 week, all of those teams can be fantastic, and the next they'll just ship silly goals. They'll lose games that they feel that they should take points from. When you look at some of the teams that are like, so you say Dundee United are doing well from where they started, and they've got 10 points now. But you'd say Motherwell have probably been poor, but they're actually ahead of Dundee United. And so I think it's all comparative to expectations when you look at how well Motherwell finished the season last season, and there hasn't been a major overhaul of personnel. They've been able to gel over a period of time. They've certainly got quality in there, but it just seems to be the inconsistency that's the big thing for them.
Yeah, I think it is, and not only that as well, Martin. I think you've got to give credits to the other teams round about, because everyone else is improving as well. you know, so you've got to then do something different. You can't then just try to pick up, like Motherwell, for example, you can't just pick up from where you left off last season. You've then got to do better, because I know Motherwell were extremely disappointed to miss out in the top six last season. You know, narrowly they missed out, but they obviously finished the season strong. So then you've got to then try and build on that. You've then got to then think, what can we do different? How can we become better? Because all the other teams round about now are becoming better. As you said, like Aberdeen have got obviously their manager they brought in at the start of the season, a full-time employee. You know, it wasn't so, a few weeks ago they ran Glasgow City close, you know, and Glasgow City had scored a late winner to make it 3-2. But then, as you say, the inconsistency. The weekend at Celtic, they shot 13 goals. You know, so it's just, and it must be so frustrating for a manager down within that six teams at the bottom half of the season. And then obviously that just then tells its own story in terms of where those teams are then, doesn't it? But all the other teams are doing extremely well in terms of all the progression that's made in the women's game. You know, they are trying to catch up, they are trying to be better, and you can see the improvements. Of course you can, because even when you watch a game nowadays, the likes of like Dundee United, Hamilton, Aberdeen, all the players are much fitter than what they were last season, for example. You know, they do have that professionalism that's now starting to filter from the top of the league, filter right down, and I think that's vitally important for the women's game. But I think now it's going to be even more difficult, because you can see obviously Celtic and Rangers and Glasgow City, the resources and the investment they've got, they're breaking away. Then you've got the likes of Hibs and Hearts. Those other teams then have got to play catch up, which is obviously it's proven difficult, and we can see that with the results.
Yeah, I think just looking again at the league table, talking about Dundee United, running City close at the weekend there, are sitting there on 10 points. They would have probably been, fairly or unfairly, they'd have been probably touted at the beginning to be fighting in that relegation battle. They managed to steer clear of it with a game or two to go last season, but they're creeping away. They've now got a big gap down to those relegation places, so they'll be really happy with that. And obviously, like we were talking about earlier, they lost 3-1 to City at the weekend, but it was a late goal to make it look a bit more respectable for City. Dundee United did have chances. So, yeah, like you say, it is showing that there is improvement right throughout the league, even from last season to this season.
Yeah, no, there is improvements, and there has to be improvements, and I'd imagine that's obviously the Dundee United target and goals will be this season is, can they create that gap and can they get away from the relegation battle? And they're certainly showing that already. I think I spoke about Dundee United, not so long ago, and I was saying, like, you know, it's difficult to see for teams coming from the West Coast, for example. It's difficult then to go to a away game and you're travelling and you're spending all that time on a bus, for example. So Dundee United have got to make their home as a fortress. You know, they've got to make it difficult for teams to come up, and obviously try and break them down and try and stay in the game as long as possible. And certainly Dundee United did that at the weekend. So there's definitely improvements there. And as you say, people probably would have been assuming Dundee United would have been in the relegation zone, maybe sitting bottom or second bottom, especially with Montrose coming up and Montrose taking some of their players as well.
Yeah.
So people may have been thinking, oh, hold on a wee minute, Dundee United are then going to flop, and they've proven that they haven't. So I'm sure the manager was sitting down and looking obviously at the fixtures and thinking, realistically, where can we pick up points and can we make it difficult at home? And that's what they're doing so far.
Moving on to Spartans now, they've probably been a bit of a surprise at how much they've struggled. I know that Becky Galbraith, not really hitting their goal scoring exploits of last season, has had a big impact because they've not really had anybody to pick up that baton for them, and then she's out injured at the moment as well. Yeah, Debbie's, you can tell she's a bit frustrated with how everything's going for them at the moment. But do you feel that they probably have enough to steer clear of those relegation places come the end of the season?
Yeah, I think they've definitely got enough within their changing room to stay clear of the relegation battles. I think for me, Spartans are almost in a similar position where Hibs were last year. It's almost like they're going through this transitional period. You know, then Kat Smart, who retired last season, you know, she was very influential in the middle of that part. As you say, Becky Galbraith is not quite firing on all cylinders as what she was last season. Alana Marshall, their captain, is getting a little bit older, shall we say. So And then we've obviously got young ones coming through, and it's about trying to bring those young ones coming through to then try and bring them up to that level. And it's difficult to embed them in. Because when I was doing a game at the weekend, Spartans had a number of young players, but they're all young quality, young players, but it's just about having that experience about playing at that level. So I think for me, they definitely will stay clear of the relegation battle. They've got enough within that changing room, and Debbie's a very experienced manager. She's been around the game a long, long time. She knows the league inside out. She knows all the players that are coming through from different teams. So, no, I believe they'll definitely have enough to stay clear of that. But she'll be the same as similar as Dundee United. She'll be obviously looking to be realistic. She's a realist. She's not someone who's going to think, I'm going to go and play Rangers and I'm going to go and take 3 points off them away from home. She's a realist. So she'll be looking at the fixtures also thinking, right, who can we take points off and how can we make it difficult for teams to come at home and play?
So one of the teams I really enjoy watching Montrose. I like the way that they play. They're always on the front foot. They're taking the season as it comes, particularly when they're playing against the stronger teams in the league. And I think they're actually getting the rewards for it as well, for playing that way rather than inviting on pressure and just trying to keep things tight. They are expansive. They do score goals. They've got goals in that team. They've made some good signings as well, and they're more than holding their own this season.
Yeah, they are, and as you say, they are. They do like to build from the back, and they do take risks. But it's almost they've got like this mindset, right? If we can see 2 goals, we'll try and score 3 goals, and no one can doubt them for that. No one can say that's the wrong way to approach a game. That's just the way. That's their philosophy. That's how they want to play football, and they are enjoyable to watch. But they've had some good results. Also, as I said, there people probably would have been assuming Dundee United, Montrose, Hamilton, that'll be the relegation ones, that'll be the ones at the bottom of the table. We can write them off. But even look at Montrose's journey through the leagues to get into the SWPL one has been tremendous. So they're doing real good stuff up at Montrose. I think they've got a really good support network around about them from the men's side also. So no, I've been really, really pleased with them. But as you says, even when obviously they were playing against Celtic and stuff, they were willing to take risks. They were willing to build from the back, make those short passes, can you find the space then to get out of danger. And see, to do that at that level, and even where they are sitting in the league, you've got to have confidence as a player able to do that. So, fair play to them and credit to them all.
And then finally, on to Aki's really, really difficult season so far for them. It was a big overhaul at the end of the season. Gary Doctor moving on was a big impact. I feel anyway. They've lost some key personnel. Like Lucy Sinclair went to party. It was the heartbeat of their midfield, and they've got a lot of young players, a lot of talent in there, but they've maybe just struggled a little this season in finding goals, relying heavily on Josie to get those goals, and not really much around the rest of the squad in that regard.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Martin. I think even when you looked at last season, they had that playoff to obviously retain their spot in the SWPL one against Gap Cairn, and I thought maybe that could have been the point where they could have obviously been relegated, but they managed to stay up, and they've just found it extremely difficult, and it's going to be like this for the rest of the season for them, unfortunately. And as you says, even when you look at their youth academy, and all the young players coming through, they're very good at bringing young players through. They're very good at handpicking those young girls at different age groups, and then embed them into the first team, and then at times then they then move on for like sort of obviously Lucy moving on. But look at Josie. Josie's a quality player for me. I played with Josie at Celtic, but see when you have that number 9 as a striker, if they're not getting any service, they don't always shine, and you can't expect then Josie to track back into midfield and then expect for them to be in the box 2 seconds later for that transitional play. It's just, I think there's a lot of pressure on her at times, and you can see it at times when she's playing and she gets frustrated, and if she's not getting that service, or if obviously they've lost the ball in certain areas of the pitch, then you can see her tracking back, trying to obviously recover and stuff. So I think for me, they're going to find it extremely tough to pick up points and wins. And I think for me, it's difficult to say, because you don't then want to be too negative, obviously, towards Hamilton Accies, but they have done tremendous over the years. And as you say, there was that big change at the start of the season. Obviously, Gary Doctor stepping away and losing a few players. So you would then maybe think, okay, we can then try and push on. But also look at it, recruitment is extremely difficult in the women's game now, all over the women's game, and especially in the SWPL one. It's so difficult because there's players now that have been offered money and finances and perks, and people have got other teams have got a bigger budget than anyone else. So Hamilton then will find it the toughest of all to try and recruit players to then come in and bolster their squad. So for me, what the good point is that they are bringing young players through to then sample this obviously level of football, playing against obviously top players, international players from all around the world, which is great because those young players will then certainly learn off them. But yeah, I think it's going to be another difficult and challenging season for Accies, unfortunately.
That's great, Emma. I've really enjoyed hearing your opinion on the season so far, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And thanks everyone for joining us on SWPL My Story.